So we'll start with the PowerPoint and deal with business matters later. So the topic is light being. And it started from an attempt to make a PowerPoint out of issues to do with light and painting. Sharon, could you start reading?
Illumination, spectrality, distinction, circulation, projection, vision, shimmer, pulse, sublime, radiance, energy, shadow, shine, liminality, immersion. Light produces space, distance, orientation, calm, contemplation. It is a gift that makes no demands, the illumination capable of conquering without force. Hans Blumenberg. According to Blumenberg, the idea of method as it emerges with Bacon and Descartes rests on the presumption that the phenomena lie in the dark and that only a focused and measured ray of direct lighting, aimed at a certain angle and from a certain perspective, is capable of wresting their truth from them. The new conception of seeing, manifested throughout modernity and at the heart of modern theory, assumes, as it is at its very foundation, that light is at the disposal of human beings, or that the modern subject is light itself. Rodolphe Basche.
This is an early, it's almost one of the first images which were generated, which is just a cave painting of hands in the dark.
The depiction of open hands in cave paintings establishes a link between gesture, light, and space that connects the inside with the outside world. Seeing is drawn into the flickering of light projected onto the walls of a cave. The image becomes a revelation. The word man in Sanskrit is derived from mana, which means to think or believe. Thus, humans are thinking beings. Hu in Indo-European language is one of the three primary sound archetypes, along with Ya and Ra. Human being distributes things and in turn illuminate things in light, language, and constructed spaces. In this way, light and being are coextensive.
That's the construction of the intellectual construction behind the idea of light being.
In ancient Greek, though certainty was based on visibility, logos aligned sight with form, and in turn, forms of knowledge were closely related to seeing. Standing in the light thus becomes a metaphor for both knowing and truth. Until the late modern period, seeing is believing, but part of the process of disenchantment of the world, this is no longer the case.
These are frescoes from the Ajanta caves. There's a Gupta period in India, 4th to 6th century, but it's equivalent of the Renaissance in Indian culture. So it comes very early, great height of Indian culture in the Gupta period. And these cave paintings spread across the whole Silk Route to China and eventually to Japan. So again, this painting within caves was the formation of a lot of early experiments in light and color.
The Ajanta cave paintings depict an entire Buddhist cosmology. They project images in ways that strips them of the vestiges of everyday through the merger of color, light, and space into the sacred realm.
Leonardo, he did a lot of studies on the way that light was structured. So he kind of incorporated a lot of studies in Islamic understandings of light and sacred geometry, and used a sort of scientific, quasi-scientific understanding of the way light is structured. This is Michelangelo's separation of light from darkness in the Sistine Chapel. So it has both a scientific and a theological underpinning. There's a straddle to the two realms, the scientific and the It's the sacred realm. This is the last painting, or one of the last paintings of Titian. It was meant to be finished after his death by his assistants. It was his last testament, but you get the feeling of a light from within, a sort of a light coming from without, but from within as well. He often, in his late period, often painted patches of color before he did drawing. And so you get a color coming through the background, which didn't necessarily coincide with form. So there's a lot of layers in a late Titian painting. And following late Titian is Rembrandt. Again, this sort of idea of sacred illumination, light from outside of the human realm. This is in the National Gallery's painting. Lester, you read.
The late paintings of both Titian and Rembrandt offer distinctive experiences of light emanating both from within and from without the painting. The paint marks and glazes shimmer within these folds of illumination.
This is Caravaggio.
Caravaggio painted The Incredulity of St. Thomas in 1602. Extremes of light and dark serves to highlight the gestural space of the painting, which highlights the relationship of seeing and touching. Vermeer almost certainly employed the device of camera obscura, which was the forerunner of photography. Perhaps she is attempting to measure light as a substance of desire because it offers itself to everything. Woman Holding a Balance, 1664.
When people have looked at this painting closely, there's nothing in the scales as if she's measuring space itself or light. There's nothing which can be detected really. This is Caspar David Friedrich.
In the painting Two Men Contemplating the Moon, 1819, Caspar David Friedrich explores the relationship of the landscape and the divine. The light is subdued, but nonetheless creates a sensation of an almost endless depth.
Painted by Alexander Cozens.
Alexander Cozens was attracted to painting landscapes at the threshold within light transforming the perception of how it was depicted.
Turner.
Turner's use of light is characterized by an all-over sensation of the dissolution of space and light. With this, it captures the sense of being beyond representation. William Blake, The Dance of Albion, 1796. Samuel Palmer was a romantic who painted scenes related to the cultural passages of nature. His work often has a dreamlike quality. Monet produced serial studies of the same object of attention in order to capture the way in which light at different times of the day would alter perception. Monet was scrupulous in his observations of the way that light would fall upon the objects of attention, with almost a method drawn from science.
That's a late Monet painting of his famous gardens, Japanese bridge. This is a drawing by Seurat.
George Seurat made this drawing of factories by moonlight in 1882 to 1883. The light is diffuse, and it is as if the image emerges out of the shadow realm of its distribution. Seurat moved beyond Impressionism because he realized that industrial organization would eat into the fabric of the natural world. Van Gogh, The Starry Night over the Rhone, 1888. Vincent van Gogh's paintings have a special sense of luminosity, which derive in part to the exposure to light in the south of France. This is a painting that presents the rapture of light. Gustave Moreau, The Apparition, 1874 to 1876.
If anyone wants to stop at a given point and just ask questions, then do so.
Gustave Moreau's subject matter drew from mythic and mystical subjects that emanated with light. Gustave Moreau, The Suitors, unfinished. Odilon Redon was a symbolist artist who opened out the continent of the unconscious, and with this the realm of the apparitional and the excessive. Odilon Redon, The Sleeping Child, 1916.
Very faint image, but you can just about see it.
Odilon Redon painted visionary scenes that appear to anticipate surrealism. Dream mixes with spectrality, invisible forces with mystical-like semblances, all cohering into sequences of otherness.
Abigail, it's your turn.
African masks had a profound influence on the development of modernist art. This mask has double eyes, which is said to represent clairvoyant capacity to see into the future or the spirit world. In effect, it is a form of double vision or the excess of vision.
The Matisse's Dancers in 1910, which is in Leningrad. What was filmed in St. Petersburg.
Henri Matisse painted both the dancers and the musicians, partly as his response to Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Whereas Picasso's painting is close to the shadow realm, the setting of the Matisse paintings are without shadow.
Mondrian.
Piet Mondrian painted The Red Tree in 1908, and this combines observation of the visible tree form with the invisible abstractions that underlay its form.
The Barlow Streetlight from 1910 to 11. This is a publication of Light Thought Forms by Annie Besant and Leadbeater, which has had a profound influence, particularly on artists such as Kandinsky. This is Rudolf Steiner, who came out of the Theosophy movement, started his own movement. And he did these series of blackboard drawings to illustrate his ideas, which had a big influence on Joseph Beuys and his blackboard paintings and Cy Twombly.
Rudolf Steiner was an occultist who was influenced by Goethe's philosophy. Goethe's philosophy and his thinking on the light and colour. He utilised the blackboard as a medium to communicate his ideas.
Another Steiner drawing. Zilda of Klint, who vanished from art history and was rediscovered. Steiner said she wouldn't be discovered until 30 years after her death, and it was in fact 40, 50 years after her death.
Can I interject, Jonathan? Interrupt? Speak, not interject. So far, would you say that so far most of the artists like Hilma af Klint and the others were doing spiritual sessions in order to channel, were really connected spiritually before painting, and thus were those channeled inspirations that created such stunning paintings?
Yeah, so it was an integrated practice which was more based upon ideas to do with the etheric body, the outside of the realm of the gross physical body, and materialism. So it's anti-materialist. So it's a different route into abstraction than that which was taken by, I mean, Kandinsky, Malevich, Mondrian, even Duchamp, all had collections of esoteric literature. So it's often overlooked the extent to which abstraction was based upon esoteric ideas and practices.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Because I knew about Hilma, who was in spiritual groups with women, other artist women, and it was something very common, I think in the 19th century, right? But
Late 19th century with the Theosophy movement and then Steiner's ideas had a profound influence on a lot of the aesthetic avant-garde who were in some cases buried by art history, not being significant.
But I think you could pose the question if this is really abstraction, for example, with Hilma af Klint, because it is symbolic for her, so it actually represents something, as far as what I've heard, or with Steiner as well, right? I mean,
I think that's true of, particularly Kandinsky took a lot from thought forms by Annie Besant, and this idea that emotions had colors and frequencies and forms to them. So in fact, it was a form of realism of the etheric realm rather than an abstraction of the materialist realm. So in a sense, it's a misrepresentation of what abstraction is, I think, in many ways.
I think Kandinsky stole ideas from Hilma af Klint, if I remember properly. He, for some reason, he ended up with a set of her drawings and copied it, and then became known for his style, which originally was Hilma style.
What I've heard was that Hilma af Klint, I mean, maybe that's not right, but I think that after her death, she said that her work wasn't to be shown to the world until maybe 100 years.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we only know her now.
Yes. I read that too, because I think at the time being a female artist was not acceptable. And also because I think her work was so spiritually conducted that clearly she wanted to protect that side of it. I read that too, yeah. Anyway, thank you for...
There was an explicit discussion between Steiner and her about how long it would take before her work could be exposed to a wider public. So it was a discussion that was that she partook in, but the works were kept in situ. They were not damaged. If you could just read this.
Just one thing, the expectation that she had on how her work would be seen, I think there's a difference why her work was accepted or was revised nowadays, which is not exactly how she expected the work to be. So I think she expected the world would evolve spiritually, and that's why people would be
So the
able
world would be
to-
ready for it in the period we're in now. She didn't expect it to be a fallen world, but
But it's a different world, isn't it? What she expected, and then and what happened. Um, and the reason why her work is important nowadays is not exactly for the same reason. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's an important difference.
I mean, the point is it's rewritten art history now.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Also, how did that rewrite art history? Is it because she's defined as having launched that style before Kandinsky, or why?
Before Kandinsky.
Mhm.
But there's a general discussion about the status of abstraction, which also arises, which Clara brought attention to. It's almost as if the ideas of abstraction are being rewritten as well. It's not just who did what first, but what the status of it is and what's being presented by the work.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
As if we need another category to understand what was happening in that part of the century. Because you have an idea of scientific fourth dimension, theory of relativity, but you've also got the idea of the fourth dimension in spiritual ideas. So you've got a conflation between two different forms of fourth dimension, which are being used to represent the aims of abstraction, particularly ideas to do with Malevich. And you've already got in early mystical cultures of pre-enlightenment similar ideas to do with the absolute. Okay, we'll move on. Molinari. Continue.
Laszlo Molinari constructed the light space modulator in 1930 and utilized it in order to generate an experimental film. I would photograph an idea rather than an object, a dream rather than an idea. Man Ray. Film noir was a development from German expressionist cinema. The shadows cast are both of light but also mood. Orson Welles, The Touch of Evil.
I mean, it's an interesting meeting point between post-war film noir and abstract expressionism, which has not really been explored with very much depth, but it's interesting the relationship between the cinematic and the large-scale paintings of abstract expressionism. Particularly, you get the large projection screen of 70 millimeter film, CinemaScope. It's Mark Roscoe from 1960.
So do you mean in terms of how they shot the film, or in what way?
And just
What,
the projection in cinemas of large extended screens, almost wraparound image, and this is so different technology to what's used now in projecting images.
Helen Frankenthaler, Redshift 1990, exemplifies her approach to colour, which is applied within a series of stains. This process of layering folds of colour become known as colour field painting.
Again, another painter who's in the last 5-10 years has undergone an incredible reevaluation. There's a great show of hers at in the West End at Gagosian not so long ago. This is a still from Flaming Creatures, I think.
Dan Brakhage, Dog Starman, 1961, is a construction created out of numerous layers of images and colour, stains and marks. The resulting film appears as a shimmering set of passages of light made manifest. When Karen Schumann made her film Fuses, 1967, she was closely influenced by the lyrical quality of Brakhage.
With Karin Schumann Fuses from 1967. Again, Fuses. You can see it's online. It's a lightning field by Walter de Mera.
Walter de Mera's work, The Lightning Field, consists of 400 polished steel rods which serve to attract lightning.
James Turrell.
The 1960s was witness to artists moving from the use of pigment to utilisation of light as a medium. James Turrell was a leading figure in this shift to large-scale light installations. Tatsuo Miyajima creates work that utilises small LED units to create fields of light on a more intimate scale.
Miyajima. He shows at a Listen gallery in this is still from Mirror by Andrei Tarkovsky. Someone else read. Next person would like to read.
I don't mind because I like Tarkovsky a lot. Andrei Tarkovsky's film Mirror, 1975, is rich in passages of rain, fire, light, and water, as if always on the edge of reality. A scene is shot of a burning hut within a rain-soaked episode. Sometimes it is as if time is being slowed down in order to portray surprises within visual arrest.
The still image from Tarkovsky's Mirror.
Anselm Kiefer, The Renowned Orders of the Night, 1997.
Says is in a yogic sleep posture, but it kind of relates to Kant's epitaph, which says the starry night above and the moral law within.
It looks very transcendental.
Yeah.
This painting by Anselm Kiefer evokes Kant when he developed the idea of the starry night above and the moral law within as a way of connecting aesthetics and ethics or morality. John Hoyland, Arras, 1978. Beautiful. Wow. Cool. So vibrant. Christopher Lebrun, Frau, 1983.
So his early work really was very strongly influenced by symbolist painting, particularly painters such as Gustav Moreau, but also German New Expressionism.
Christopher Lebrun was influenced in part by symbolist painting. His later work dispenses with figural references, becoming instead presentations of the flux of substances.
A painting from 217.
It's very rhythmic looking. Christopher Lebrun, Walton, 2013. Nina Murdoch, Pass, 2015-18.
You talk a little bit, Nina, about your paintings this period.
It's very strange because it looks like Turner light in an urban, in a contemporary set. Nina Murdoch's paintings started from the depiction of places on the edge of dissolution, but they increasingly have lost this process of reference to assume a relationship to mood and atmosphere. The paintings appear to shimmer in the intersection of different light forms. Nina Murdoch, Remember the Day, 2022.
Mark Bradford.
Mark Bradford, Q1 2020, is typical of his thickly textured application of paint. The surface of the painting ripples with a play of light.
It's still from Blade Runner by Ridley Scott.
Blade Runner has an explicit subject matter, but also about the staging of different light, affects, and moods. At times, the setting appears to nighttime glowing in artificial light, but the elite, in turn, are able to access daylight as opposed to the grim experience of light conditions of the underclass.
Still from Blade Runner. It's a figure Rachel, who's a replicant, but doesn't know she is.
Christian Boltanski, the Theater of Shadows, 1984.
Mona Hatoum.
Ah oui. Mona Hatoum's Life Sentences, 1990, is a work that generates the potential for light to be the cipher of abjection, and with this, the issuing of menace. Bodies stand before, simply there, in place, manifesting as outward appearance, form forming form, a radiation of life. Merde, excuse my French. A radiation of light, like a shining force, beautiful as such, and perhaps in turn true. Bodies as a vehicle to manifest the obscure connections that lies remote from everyday dispensation, a bringing into presence, an arrival contained in posture, or a masking within semblance. Absence and presence held in equal relation, such that truth might pass through, as if phantom or as abandonment. Oof. Derek Jarman's film, The Garden, 1990, contains scenes drawn out of the imagination. In this scene, daylight is mixed with torchlight, as if to create a poetic interval of otherness. Interval of otherness, that's beautiful. Peter Doig's painting is based upon a multiplicity of locations, North America, the Caribbean, and Europe being the main places. In turn, these locations are folded into memories of paintings encountered, in particular, the North American sublime, German Romanticism, and various manifestations of Expressionism. The combination of all the travels, memories, and references is what gives rise to surprise within his art, all conveying in turn different sensations of light related to place. I love this one. Painting doesn't freeze time. It circulates and recycles time like a wheel that turns. Those who were first might well be last. Painting is a very slow art. It doesn't travel with the speed of light. That's why dead painters shine so bright. Marlène Dumas, Elena's Dream, 2008.
A brilliant statement.
Wow, powerful. Very slow art. Nan Goldin, The Face as Projector and Attractor of Light. Nan Goldin's photographs are demonstrations of different effects of light and shadow. Often set in hotel bedrooms and clubs, these are invariably images that capture moods that derive from multiple light sources. Nan Goldin, Bruce in Fog, Pozzuoli, Italy, 1995.
So another reader who'd like to read this?
Maybe me?
Yeah, you read.
Yuda Yoshihiko produced a series of forest photographs produced in 1990 to 1991. He called the series Queen Knot. On a figural level, we are drawn into the deep of an ancient forest. There is a feeling of another time, a time that is perhaps closer to being immemorial, or even a realm that is detached by its sense of time and hence from our sense of having a world. The surface of these images appears to be a form of dazzling shadow, intense and all over, a zone of iridescent becoming that is a zone of iridescent becoming that is retained within itself. We might enter, but only through the sense of being outside of the countenance of our vision. In other words, a feeling abandonment is exacted from us as we moved inward. Rather than moving in straight lines, we are instead forced to circle around, and in doing so, face the gaps that might appear within thought. In these works, we are awake to everything that can be seen, and as such, we might dwell within the field of vision itself. Yet, there is also an apprehension of that which exceeds vision, namely an equally intense sense of non-being that challenges the frame of representation. Interior and anterior are drawn into close proximity as the certainties of vision give way to a vertigo of orientation. Daniel Gustav Kramer, Woodland, 2004.
He was a student at the Royal College in Print in that time. It is a series of a trilogy of landscape paintings, forest photographs, underwater photographs, and mountain photographs. He'd often talk about he'd walk for hours in a forest before he took a photograph. And often it was what was the impulse to take a photograph was the sound of a broken twig or underfoot, or it was sometimes outside of vision that generated the photograph, the sort of apprehension of something emerging out of nowhere or from nothing.
Daniel Gustav Kramer created a trilogy of photographs based on locations in the forest, underwater and on mountains, which each capturing a distinct visibility. Olafur Eliasson, Weather Report, 2003. In this installation work by Eliasson, there is a simulated presentation of what might be imagined to be the starting point for a sublime experience, but one that is bereft of any danger. There is instead a feeling of warm glow of technological otherness that induces contemplation rather than the experience issuing out of discord. On the edge of disappearing or fading out, repeating this again and again until disappearing from life itself. Francesca Woodman, on Being an Angel, Self-Portrait, 1977. Francesca Woodman's work, The Realm of Uncanny Staging of the Depiction of the Self, it as though life is being presented within a double light that falls there every day with the spectrum.
So a new reader, Clara.
Sorry. Mosaic's coup, still life number 5, captures light falling on eggs. The object is repeated in order to articulate the way light falls in different articulations. Kaya Zheng, Yunhua. The night is the extension of light, rather than its opposite, whose anonymous existence that submerges being within it and eliminates everything. Those that are forgotten, hidden, and rejected are completely exposed to darkness, and those that are covered just leave a presence of absence, lingering a ghost-like naked existence. The night symbolizes a challenge to the metaphorical ordering of light and knowledge, and the nature of the index. It is excluded from the intellectual center represented by language, and thus is regarded as something unknowable, unsayable, and unwritable. Kaya Zheng. In 2 recent installations, Kate Howe constructs cave or womb-like spaces which envelop the spectator within folds of light and shadow. They mix an archaic memory of light with a mode light that is of the yet to come.
To say mode of light.
Mode of light, yeah. Far from identifying with the emergence from the cave to gaze at a high noon of reality, Artaud thinks that modern consciousness suffers from a lack of shadows. The remedy is to remain in the cave, but devise better spectacles. The theater that Artaud proposes will serve consciousness by naming and directing shadows, and destroying false shadows, to prepare the way for a new generation of shadows, around which will assemble the true spectacle of life. Susan Sontag. Sharon Wortman, Higher Ground. Sharon Wortman's drawing installations, 2023, offers a glimpse of a world that's at standstill. Traces of light record a leap into an unexpected arrival of the space of elsewhere. Sharon Workman, Elsewhere. Kanaga is a wooden mask worn by the Dogon tribe in Bali during the Dharma dance, celebrating the connection between the physical world and the otherworldly. Nizar O. Kananga. Cinematic space heightens the portrayal of looking at what is either forbidden or impossible. In this, it draws the spectator closer to the working of desire within the setting of darkness.
Double Life of Veronique Michalovsky.
Cinema can both have explicit narrative content, whilst at the same time becoming a study of formal elements related to light and optics, as it is the case with the film Double Life of Veronique. Globalism has introduced a monoculture of light in the form of screens, surveillance, technology, and performance sites. Direct contact with natural forms of light declines in proportion to an immersive culture of the self-same light.
This is still from Red Desert by Antonioni from the mid-60s. This is one of his first color films.
There is talk of people as being dull or being bright, as having a shady past, possessing a shiny appearance or even a star-like quality, all on the level of metaphorical figuration. Metaphors of light color the way we imagine the world. Light can be understood as a toxic medium, as much as modes of illumination that itself a double figure of thought. She was dreaming of light forms passing through her body, but at such a speed that time appeared a standing still. She knew that she was not alone, and that thought was like a body of light in the midst of so much dark matter. This was unlike so many other dreams that came to her, so it was like being touched by the deepest form of the elsewhere of being.
We can return to some of the slides if you want to discuss anything.
I did love that last text. She was dreaming of light forms. And I think it goes so well with that picture. Can I read it again, please? The last slide.
To put it up again.
Beautiful photograph, beautifully lit. Wow.
So you read it.
Okay. She was dreaming of light forms passing through her body, but at such a speed that time appeared as standing still. She knew that she was not alone, and that thought was like a body of light in the midst of so much dark matter. This was unlike so many other dreams that came to her. So it was like being touched by the deepest form of the elsewhere of being. It's like, yeah, it's like a materialization of light in some ways. And then the ethereal, the spirit and the body connected. I find this text very poetic. Light forms passing through her body. Wow. Energy. Body light in the midst of so much dark matter. Yeah, and there is no light without darkness anyway, nor without dark matter. Sorry, just talking to myself, but I like this. I like this very much. I also very much liked a text from a Chinese artist. I can't remember her name. It's quite long.
This is the.
Yes, very beautiful. The night is the extension of light rather than its opposite, whose anonymous existence that submerges being within it and eliminates everything. Those that are forgotten, hidden, and rejected are completely exposed to darkness, and those that are covered just leave a presence of absence, lingering a ghost-like naked existence. The night symbolizes a challenge to the metaphorical orderings of light and knowledge and the nature of the index. It is excluded from the intellectual center represented by language, and thus is regarded as something unknowable, unsayable, and unreadable. Whoa. I want to write like that.
Also, there was something about abjection and light, I think, with Mona Hatoum's work. And I was wondering if we could maybe go back to that, because I'm curious about the relation to abjection. I can't really imagine what that. Yeah. The potential for light to be the cipher of abjection.
I mean, it's the work itself is. Oh, sorry. I've lost it.
I think it was before.
Yeah, just a minute.
Yeah, and one before, right?
That's
No.
it. That's the work. Life sentence. It's Mona Hatoum.
And that was a thought that you had in relation to her work, that light becomes a cipher for abjection.
Yeah. I think in both these works, both by Boltanski and Mona Hatoum, there's a kind of use of shadow and projection of light, which is ghostly or apparitional or object.
Yeah, that's very original. I would never have thought of that.
Actually, I'm not sure I understand. I'm not sure I understand what it actually means. That slide with the abjection generates the potential for light to be the cipher. I think I don't know what cipher is. Is it like a vortex or a black hole or
Cipher is just a medium,
cipher?
something that passes through a channel.
That is like a chiffre.
Ah. Are the objections of, yeah, we need to reread that. I don't know, I'm bugging on this a little bit. It's a work that generates the potential for light to be the cipher, okay, of abjection. Ah, and with this issuing of menace. D'accord. Okay, now I get it. I didn't understand cipher, that's why. Thank you. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really understand it. I think it's very elusive, but that's what it should be, I guess.
But I think I think it's like in all of the paintings we're talking about light being this incredible illuminative sort of, I don't know, uplifting space that it's creating. And this is kind of, you know, it's quite hectic. I mean, imagine being in that room in Hatoum's installation. It's very confronting and very harsh, very brutal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you have to experience that work.
And it'd be almost a little bit like what's the exploding shed, where you sort of, as you're walking around it, you just, if the light catches your eye, you know, you're then sort of blinded by what the middle of it, the center of it.
Yeah, right. I felt this in Sarah C's show. I don't know if any one of you has seen this, but it's in Peckham in the station at the moment. And there's also, yeah, it's a similar setup of light, I guess. So there's a light in the center, and there's projections on the walls, and you can move in the space, but you constantly get blinded as well. Yeah, very, very harsh and inconvenient. Has anyone seen this?
No, it's worth seeing.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it as well.
One of the paintings shown reminded me of a kilogram someone in my cohorts did this year. And I don't know who that is. If you go down a little bit, please, it's like, it reminds me of Turkish carpets or Persian art. It's very colorful. It said that it had a lot of thick layers of painting. I remember that. Down and oh, where is it? Yeah, it could be the red one or a similar one. So Mark Bradford, yeah, either this one or another one. And someone in my cohort in photography, which is my MA, yes, that is the one. She did something super similar, but with chemograms. Again, chemogram is about using light. And I think it's super interesting, although a painting will show the texture of the oil, but this is also when light is used as a medium and challenges the medium used. That's why a lot of photographs can actually look like painting and are painted upon like this. It's quite extraordinary. It looks really similar.
Nina, can I ask what sort of scale you're painting at? How big are the paintings that we were looking at?
Well, the figurative one was there. That was about 6 foot, but I was doing egg tempera on big gesso boards, where you could work back into the gesso and then create the light from behind. So that was why I was using gesso. But now I'm doing watercolor and pastel, and I'm trying to scale it up to that sort of size at the moment, because I think they work better when they're really big. So you can get they just Cause I've been doing lots of little ones to try and experimenting with this new way of working. So that one is about 6 foot. That one there, yeah.
So you get the sensation that you can almost step into the space.
Yes, yeah. So I sort of changed quite a lot recently, so it's quite exciting in terms of the subject, how I'm working, trying to get this effect. But yeah.
There's a little interesting background to this talk, because I met Nina in a trip to Lake Como, an artist trip. I said I'd write something for her, but in a way this just started generating the PowerPoint. So I started from the looking at paintings on an iPhone almost, and saying, wow, there's something really interesting happening here.
You've not seen them for real, have you? You might not you've not seen them for real. You might really not like them when you see them for real.
Yeah. That's a double. That might be the double jeopardy, really.
Yeah, I'm a bit scared of you seeing them for real now.
But I thought there was an interesting lineage that had come out of, that they were much more part of a tradition that's not necessarily been totally represented as art history or as a coherent tradition. It made Christopher LeBron look more interesting for me, your work.
I absolutely love his work. He's one of my favourite artists. It's just amazing, his art. Just the rhythm and the colour. It's just incredible.
But it made me look at him again. That's what I'm saying. I just thought I became more interested retrospectively almost.
Yes.
This is beautiful, what we are looking at now. It's almost hypnotic and meditative. You just like get towards the light and get stuck there. It's beautiful. Gosh.
Thank you.
I don't have to, that painting, I've never painted in my life. Well, I am, but with a camera, but that is absolutely gorgeous. It's a bit Turner-like. Wow.
It's just taking some, they're just bits of walls. So it's just happen to see something happen on a wall that will just vanish, and trying to capture that. I think that's, so it's just not, it's nothing that dramatic, the subject matter. So it was just looking.
Nina, were you in a very meditative state when you did that?
I always go into one when I paint. Mm-hmm. I listen to sort of the same songs to get myself into a certain place. And the talk on silence is really interesting, because that's why I try and get rid of all the noise in my head. Otherwise I can't work. So you sort of create your own internal space to be able to paint. Well, I have to do that because they're quite complex.
I feel it anyway, looking at it, that it's so meditative and spiritual and soothing, and yeah, it's very beautiful. Wow.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I mean, it's just where you can just lose hours and not quite know where you've gone. I love it. You come out and I don't know, it's very hard to talk about work.
Marlene, that statement about time, I forget where it is now.
Oh yes, a beautiful statement on the slowness of painting and.
Yeah. there any other things which jut out or need to be paid attention to?
I thought the last bit when you said that a globalization of light, of everyone being exposed to the same sort of light, was interesting. Because now when you go to the supermarket, you can have like hundreds of different light bulbs you can choose from for different light. But I know you're talking about, it's just that we have more choice of what sort of light we want as well in our lives.
But then there's also commercial space or spaces like the TV studio that have no shadow, perhaps. I thought that was also interesting that there is like some connection between light and totality, maybe.
And control?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was also thinking of the unified space. So, for example, in Matisse or other paintings from the presentation, where you feel like you have the space is somehow unified, and the light is everywhere, and well, yeah, I don't know. It's unfinished thoughts, but.
Well, you know, in terms of photography and selfies, if you look at all the filters that were created over the years to actually supposedly make you look more beautiful, but actually flattening your shadows and erasing as many so-called flaws, those are not flaws, but characters of the face. But that is a unification of light via ego.
Yeah, and you can also get cameras that show your aura. Susan Hiller did a piece of work where like you take pictures and there's a light that comes out from different people and they're different colors and aura. There's actually, I think there's cameras that do that.
Yes, they capture the electromagnetic field of people, but of plants as well and of different things. They do, yeah, and it's really crazy. It's interesting. And then meanings are assigned to the different aura colors or color that transpires through. Yeah.
I mean, that relates to the insights of book thought forms, which is the etheric representation of colors and auras.
Interesting. Yeah, I wanted actually to look into that. The interpretation of aura colors and colors.
There's an artist called Marshall Arisman in New York who's died recently, who paints auras.
What is his name again?
Marshall Arisman.
Marshall.
He could see auras. He said he could see them.
Oh, wow.
It's a really depressing notion, though, this idea of monoculture of light, this idea of a flattening out of a globalized light. That, because you think, when I think of travel, you think of these incredible places where you go where the light quality is so different, whether it's, I don't know, on a tuk-tuk through the middle of the jungle, or, you know, where, you know, there's just such different variations of cultural difference of light. So that would be so sad to lose that. But I understand, you know, through our consuming through screens and everything else, it is a flattening out.
I did 3 series back to back, challenging the perception of skin color using light. So the first was called different shades of black. Then I did different shades of yellow, and I did different shades of white, non-colors, right? But by using different type of lights, it became, I mean, the term is a bit harsh because it's not what I intend to be, but it became a serious tool to actually kill some stereotypes by showing that light is the one creating our perceptions of colors, and that it varies according to the environment, but it also matches nature elements because we are part of nature. Anyway, let me not digress on that, but light became my tool to fight stereotypes and prove, hopefully, how wrong the stereotypes are, because according to the light, then there is no such thing as a black skin or brown or white skin. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
I also feel that the light being is not only about the visual light, but also about weight, like the lightness of the things, and also the artist's attention to different subject matters. And there's a lot in CinemaScope, and the temporality of the creation, like the works that Misia has is through the light and captured by the camera. Also for Sharon's work is, except for the very light captured traces, but actually it carries very like heavy things inside and behind it. Yeah, I think every work has the lightness. And also we talked about the Klimt was not famous after before her death. It's like the lightness of a life, and then becomes very shine after the death. This kind of feeling there.
Patrick, you're quiet today.
Me? Okay. Oh, Patrick, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I was. I thought there was one image that reminded me of another painter. A very, very colourful image with a diagonal line through it. Reminded me. Well, the name of the artist I was speaking. Yeah, it reminded me of paintings of Hans Hofmann, which are extremely colourful, and I really like. And that painting reminded me of those. Yeah, that was the one thing that he influenced my painting a lot when I used to paint. That's why I was thinking of him.
Well, Hoffman.
Yeah.
I was a big influence on John Hoyland, who I showed us the slide of.
Who was the painting by that has it's got a diagonal through it, and it's incredibly colourful. I think it's just before the second.
John Hoyland.
Okay, that's why it reminded me of him, because it's, he definitely looks like a Hoffman.
He was influenced by Hoffman.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's all I was thinking. It just really reminded me of Hoffman's work.
I mean, in the 1970s, John Hoyland was a huge figure, one of the most celebrated painters in the whole of the UK. It's sort of interesting how assessment over a period of time changes.
Yeah. That kind of abstract use of colour with some kind of depth just created by push and pull and somehow geometrical shapes seems not to be of interest these days to people. But it interests me.
I mean, it's muddied by the legacy of Greenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed, you had in your slide deck there, you had a Mona Hatoum piece with the light casting shadows around the room. And I think Sharon mentioned Cornelia Parker's the exploded shed. And it got me thinking about the use of light, of depicting something that's not there, which is something that's of personal interest to me. And, in those two works, the Cornelia Parker and the Mona Hatoum, it's a different way of dealing with light than, let's say, with a lot of the paintings that you were showing as example points.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, going back to the what is it called, the painting I was talking about, I think he's famous for saying light, something about light is color, or color is light, or something along these lines, right? I can't remember the exact quote now. In other words, that you create light through color, not. I mean, that was what he believed. Hoffman, that was.
Physically, light, oh no, physically, color is the reflection of light, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, sorry, I was talking in the, yeah. I was in mute. Yeah, I think so too. I was saying.
Yeah, I think I can't really, isn't it also that this notion that color is light, I think it's only known since Newton and Goethe, so since around early 18th century. And since then painter painted with this notion that color is light, I guess. I don't know. Is that right?
But I guess, isn't that knowing it in kind of a rational sort of way? Whereas, I mean, we've all experienced color as human beings, so you respond to it in a certain way, even if you don't know the mechanics of it.
But I mean, I think Goethe wrote a book on light and color, right? I wrote a book on color, actually.
Yeah, and then there is this model.
The theory of color, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Way color is the negative of what it's being bounced off of, because whatever it's bouncing off of absorbs all the light rays. So it's only the things that it can't absorb is what you see and what gives it its color. So if you think about it, it's kind of a reverse image.
So it's the negation of light.
Something along those lines, yeah. I mean, I kept myself awake at night thinking about it, but there's like an interesting thought there somewhere.
I love that Paul Klee painting you had in the presentation too, where it just looks like he's amplified just certain parts of those squares. So there's some he's just turned up the volume on with the light reflecting out.
Yeah, it's like visually conveying music feeling, and in the end, they are both different kinds of waves that people can perceive. So we have some synthetic feeling to those images. I remember I saw a documentary about color. So there is a person who is different from normal people, that she can feel maybe 4 kinds of original colors from the, what does it call, the screen inside the iris. It is like when she gets into a many color space or environment, she will feel super dizzy because that there's so many information being absorbed by the body. So she will need to wear sunglasses everywhere to reduce the color that she can see. And I feel that is very magical kind of thing.
It's just like some people who do not see colors, daltonien. I don't know what it's called in English. Daltonien.
Yeah, and maybe some people only see 2 colors or maybe no colors.
And then you've got animals who see many, many more colors than we do. And it's like, has there been a lecture on color? Actually, that's a question. Is there a lecture? Jonathan, have you done a lecture on color?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Huh?
There's an interesting history of color because colors coincide with naming. We have to name a color before we see it almost. If we go back to medieval periods, a very narrow range of names for colors, very narrow.
But Jonathan, I don't think you've done a talk on colour, have you?
Maybe not a color. I've got something on color, but not a talk on color per se.
I just put in the chat. There's a PowerPoint on the website on color.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Cool, thank you. I read a lot from Pastourou, a French writer on colors that helped me when I did the series on black, white, and yellow. And he he researches information like you, Jonathan, from various sources, not as extensively, but he researches it in mythology, in religion, depending on different cultures, symbolism. Would be great if you could do a talk, because that, with your take, it would be really interesting. Color and music, is there such thing as color in music? Yeah.
There's one on black as well.
Mm.
This not so long ago, there's one on black. We've got one on shadow.
Okay, I will look into that.
So we've got a whole spectrum of things which are implicated in light and color.
I mean, all your lectures are brilliant. I really adored this one on light being. I just think it was a serious treat. You should do books. Anyway.
I think it was interesting, the starting point for it. I mean, in a way, it was a sort of creative starting point rather than I didn't have a thesis to begin with.
You mean the starting point is the human, the starting point there?
No, literally the starting point was writing something on Nina's work and going out from there and seeing what could be done and what could be said. And is it grounded in a contextual history, or so I just wanted to know something about something which was like an eruption out of nothing. You see something and it's an eruption, and you think that's got enormous implication or something. I mean, there's the history of everything. If you want to begin somewhere, you just throw a dart and it lands somewhere, and you start accepting that, throw the dice and making something of it.
Do you think as artists we can do that for ourselves, or do you think that takes somebody else to do that for you?
I think it's an artist's way of thinking.
Mm.
Although I'm not a trained art historian, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a cultural theorist.
So it's almost to start a mapping process of thinking, where do you connect into the web of all of those other ideas, and where are the cross references, and where are
you start finding references out of nothing. Things come to you out of that process.
It's really interesting because you've made a lot of sense. You know, a lot of the artists you've mentioned I've always loved, and you've sort of, without, you know, you brought it all together for me. It's really, really interesting and helpful for me. I'm gonna have to.
I said to you that you've got a kind of place in history, whether you like it or not.
I'm downloading this talk and having that, definitely. You know, yes.
So it's a sort of it's very practical. It does something in the world, or potentially tries to do something in the world about how things are placed and what position they take themselves in, and what gravity they have, or what touch they have. It's a pleasure to do it.
Well, it was for me. It's been a pleasure talking to you about it. It's really helped me hugely make sense of everything. So very grateful to that. To you.
Indirectly, a show came out of it. So there was work around which I thought a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and there's already a coherence. It's got a coherence to it. So it's helped with creating. And it's helped with the discussion of various artists' work. And so it's generated a text which is outside of the PowerPoint. It's something additional.
Is this the show you're opening this week? Is this
on Wednesday?
On Wednesday.
Welcome.
For me, this lecture is very inspiring also with regards to, it might sound very obvious what I'm saying, but it is not to me. In the sense that light and lighting is used in painting versus photography. Because obviously the medium, and I know it sounds also maybe abstract, the mediums are very different, but I really loved seeing again those pictures, Renaissance, I think, with the light coming from within. And I kept on saying, how can I do that with photography? And Woodman, obviously, movement, I've done a lot of things like that, but how to generate such a strong impact as well with photography and with the light spatially, and because there is texture to painting that you don't have in photography. Not saying that photography is flat, but how to, maybe I'm mumbling because it's very conceptual and not super clear, but how to get really inspired by some painting like your painting. I think, Nina, what I saw is super inspiring because it's like Turner-like, and it's like, it's so meditative and so hypnotic. And I was thinking how to get this, how to transpose that to photography with that same depth as well. You know, just a thought.
But you just have to have those paintings in your head when you go into the studio. You have to have those, I don't know, those nocturne paintings or those Vermeer paintings or Rembrandt's light in your head, and then you light it. You light the room. You capture.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Vermeer is, yeah, it's you're right, and it's a given, but more like, yes, this Turner sort of, because there's texture. I think it's light and texture versus light and photography and no texture. I don't know. I think it adds
optical mixing of pigments.
Right.
So it's actually physical.
And it's even on you know, on a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, you can feel that there's depth to it.
I mean, it's like Titian's paintings exemplify that. I mean, if you saw through layers of Titian's underpaintings, you'd realize that an awful lot's happening with color, which you don't actually seem to see, but you perceive anyway.
Yeah, lots of it is underpainting, isn't it? It's
What about
to
the
make the
painting?
colours to make the colours sort of sing and to break the colours up. Which is the
So look
opposite.
what happens with physically what he does with paint.
Mm.
And towards the end of his life, he painted a lot with his fingers because he's arthritic. So he actually mixed paint on the canvas almost. But it's the laying down of substance, of pigment, that you get this optical mixing as well, which is a different color experience of light than that of substance. So it's not the actual, just alone the actual pigment, it's some other process which occurs as well.
Do you think he might be the very beginning of Impressionism?
I think he jumps past Impressionism.
Thank you. It's given me a lot of cool ideas just now, actually. Yeah, I'm going to try something.
That's the idea. Okay, we'll finish here now. Next week is on the double.